However, another pro is if it performs badly, just like with the ads, if it performs badly for the sponsor, you don't need to share in that risk. So that's a pro of having sponsors on your podcast.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
Back in episode number 5, I went into a whole bunch of detail on the 7 different ways that you can monetize your show. So if you haven't checked that out yet, if you haven't listened to episode number 5, you are going to want to go back, because in that episode, I give you all 7 of the ways that you will be able to monetize your show, make money through your show. In this episode today, right now, episode number 30, I'm going to approach 4 of those ways and give you a little bonus. I'm going to approach just 4 of those ways to monetize. But if you want all of the ways, you go there. The benefit of listening to this episode, even though I'm doing just 4, the first benefit is that what I'm using right now, what I'm sharing with you right now, are the best 4. Well, one of the other ones is probably a little bit better, but these are the best 4. You're going to want to hear them. These are the most common 4. And second, I'm going to actually give you all the pros and cons so that you can think between if you want to do it this way or if you want to do it the other way. So let's get started. Let's dive into the pros and cons of the 4 most common monetization strategies. Number 1, you can sell ads. You can sell ad spots for advertisers. And the pros here is A, it's fast and easy. Number 2, it's very little effort on your part to sell those ad spots, because a lot of times your hosting platform will actually do it all for you. The third pro, is that it's a very short commitment. You don't have to keep them as your advertiser for a long, long time. The fourth pro is if it performs terribly, if it performs badly for the advertiser, you don't have to share in the risk. So what are the cons? Because there are many cons, more cons than there are pros. Con number 1, you're building someone else's business. Now, some people don't mind that. Some people want to help other people, but you want to keep it in mind. You are building somebody else's business, not necessarily your own. Another con, usually it's just pennies for how much work you're doing, especially if you have the average, which is like 130 listeners per episode, especially if you just have the average amount of listeners. They usually are trying to pay you 10, 15, 20, maybe up to like $30 cost per mil. That's cost per 1,000. Mil like the Spanish mil, the other mil like 1,000, okay? It's cost per 1,000. They'll give you like $20 per 1,000 listeners that are going to download an episode. So if you have 100 and you're getting 20 CPM, you're going to make like 2 cents or something, 20 cents. Whatever the math ends up being, it's not a lot. It's pennies. Another con is it could be in a completely different language. When you're working with these selling ad spots, I had a client and his name's Chris. Chris Miles has a podcast, and I remember that there was the same ad that I couldn't understand. I'm not fluent in Spanish, and randomly enough, the advertisers wanted to make a lot of money. So at the very beginning of Chris's podcast, they put a 30-second Spanish ad. And then guess what came up right after it? The exact same 30-second Spanish ad. And all of Chris's listeners do speak English. Maybe a couple of them can speak more than one language, but there's really no reason to have those advertisers advertising on your show if it doesn't fit your exact right person. So other people like Chris and others that are going to these podcast platforms and saying, yeah, go ahead. I want to make money. I want to make 20 cents or 30 cents or $20 each and every time somebody listens to your thing. Well, some of the cons is that it might be in a totally different language and they might put it back to back. Here it is and here it is again. And it could turn off some different listeners. So that's the next one is most ads aren't really targeted perfectly for your listeners. So it can really just kind of throw them off. And in some cases, they might leave your podcast and never come back because the ads don't really fit. In other cases, I've seen people have these podcast ads that come onto their show, and they might have a podcast about, let's just pretend that I can't even think of it. If it's a do-it-yourself podcast, and you would think, oh, it'd be perfect for this podcast, is if they had like Home Depot or Lowe's on here. But instead, they'll go on and they'll talk about this random kind of meat. And so sometimes the ads are just so far off of what your listener wants, it can be a little bit crazy and it can actually pull them off. It can make it more likely that you won't be able to retain your listener. Another con to selling these ad spots is that it makes it difficult to offer your own products or services to your listener. So if you're already having somebody else's ads on your show, it can make it a challenge to have your stuff. If you want to grow your business, it could be a challenge because you have these advertisers. Another consideration, another con is if it performs absolutely well. If this ad performs perfectly, and let's just say your sponsor, your advertiser, makes millions of dollars from being on your show just once or twice or three times, you don't get to share in that profit. And it might make you feel bad that they're doing so well and you only made a few $100. That's just another thing to think about. All right. The second thing that we want to talk about, a way to actually make money through your podcast, is through show sponsors. Show sponsors and advertisers are different, and you'll kind of get that as I share with you the pros and cons of a show sponsor. So one of the pros of a show sponsor, different from an advertiser, is that you usually make more than if you're just selling ads. Generally, when you're selling ads, they're doing $10 CPM, $15, $20, or $30 cost per mil. But when you're working with a sponsor, you have the ability to be able to charge a little bit more per listener. So that's one benefit. The next benefit, the next pro, is it's usually focused more on your target audience. So that's great because you're going to be able to keep your audience sticking around and listening to your show. Another pro of a show sponsor is usually it's more value to the sponsor. So it also feels really good to you because you're adding value to somebody that you probably believe in. Another benefit, another pro, is that you have more control of what your audience hears. So when I mentioned the Spanish advertisements on an English-speaking podcast, and when I mentioned that you have advertisements that just go the same ad twice in a row, and it gets super annoying. And when I mentioned that these are ads that get sold to your podcast, having a sponsor allows you a little bit more control, and you can add value to them, and it just feels good. So you got that control, what your audience is going to hear, and it's a little bit easier to keep it all in your own language. Just another benefit. Generally, one other thing is with the advertisers, you might only have them doing 1 or 2 or 3 episodes. With the sponsors, generally you can have them working with you as a partner of your podcast for 3, 6, or even 12 months long. So it's generally longer commitments. So you make more per listen, per download, per episode, and you can make it a little bit longer. However, another pro is if it performs badly, just like with the ads, if it performs badly for the sponsor, you don't need to share in that risk. So that's a pro of having sponsors on your podcast. Well, on the cons, you are building someone else's business. Again, another one is it takes more effort to find the right fit and to sell the ads. So when you're working with just the advertisers, they come to you and they automatically get put onto yours. But when you want to have a sponsor that's a partner of your show, it just takes a little bit more time and effort. Maybe you don't have that time and effort. Maybe it's just easier to go the other way. So it's a good thing to think about. Another con is sometimes they'll expect more than just an ad slot on the podcast. For example, they might want to be in the show notes. They might want you to send emails to your email list if you have one. They might want you to do some social media shout outs as well. So that could be a con because it could take a little bit more of your time. But again, you are making more money. And the last con of a sponsor, this is number 2 still. The sponsor's number 2, the advertiser was number 1. But the last con of a sponsor is if it performs well for the sponsor, again, you don't get to share in the upside. So that brings us to our next 2, which just get, in my opinion, better and better and better. So number 3 is selling your own products or services. So what are the pros? What are the cons? Here's some pros. You're building your own business. Your own business is growing. Number 2 is generally it has the absolute highest potential for gross revenue of all of these strategies that I'm sharing today. If you go back to episode 5, I mentioned that before. If you go back to episode 5, there's 7 strategies, and one of those I actually made more money with than just this. But however, for the 4 that I'm sharing with you today, the 4 most common ones, number 3 being selling your own products and services, you're probably going to make the most amount of money. You have the best potential for gross revenue. Additionally, pros, it's easily the most fun and exciting because you're selling your own stuff. It's your own business. And yeah, we'll get to the risks here in a second, but it's exciting to be able to build your own business. It feels good. It's fun and exciting. The next one is you can choose to do it either for a short time or a long time. So instead of just having advertisers or sponsors, you can be like, hey, let me just try this out on a couple of episodes, or let me try it out on one episode, or let me try it out forever. So you have the ability easily to be able to do that without the bureaucracy of like dealing with other people, unless you have business partners, obviously. Another pro is if it performs awesome, you don't have to share a dime with anyone else unless you have business partners, then you will be sharing it with them. But if this just skyrockets, you get all the glory. And you also have the most control of what your listener hears when you're doing your own products or services on your podcast. But there are some cons to having your own products and services. So let's get into 5 of them right now. Hey, my friend, as you know, this episode is sponsored by my company, growyourshow.com. We want you to be able to have the best tools at your disposal without costing you a whole arm and a leg. So right now you can get a free list of vetted equipment that like mics, mixers, webcams, sound treatment, editing software, everything that you need. I created the whole PDF with direct purchase links just to save you time and money, to help it be more convenient for you. So this free PDF will help you skip all the guesswork. If it's on there, it's vetted and approved by yours truly. And if it's not on there, it's probably not worth the money. So go ahead and get yours at growyourshow.com/PDF. Let's get back into the show. With the cons of selling your own stuff on your podcast, you could feel like a sellout. And that's a terrible feeling like a sellout, feeling like, man, if I sell my own products or services, I might get judged by my listener. I might lose a listener or 2. And that doesn't feel so good. If you do feel this way, by the way, then you'll want to go back to episode 10. Go back to episode 10 of the podcast on podcasting, because episode 10 talks all about helping you to be able to feel better about monetizing, because you should monetize. And there's lots of details on there, but there is a con. You might just feel bad. Next one is you have to craft the message or pay a copywriter. So you've got to get the message crafted, and you either have to be going through the stress of doing it yourself. So to wrap it up with, you have to craft your own message or pay a copywriter. You either have to figure out that the stress and effort of that or the money that it's going to cost you. But if it's your own product, you've got to figure out a way to deliver the message so that you actually get results. So just be mindful of that. And additionally, if it does perform badly, guess what? It's your own stuff, so you accept all the risk. So if it doesn't go anywhere and you paid a copywriter, and let's say you paid a voiceover artist, then in this case, you lose all of that money that you paid out. You're not going to get it back. And so it's all your risk. The next one is you could grow your business even faster than you are able to grow. So you get so many clients because you're doing this, and it's going to thousands of people, that maybe your systems and processes are not in place yet, which ends up making you lose out on money or look bad to your clients and customers and future customers. So you could grow, what do they call that? when you're too big for your britches, or I don't know what that saying is, but you don't want to grow too fast because you got to be in control of your growth. And that could happen when you start promoting on your podcast. The last con of selling your own products or services on your podcast is you're going to have to fulfill all of the contracts. This kind of goes with maybe just growing too fast, but you got to think about this. If you sell your own product or your own service, let's just say if it's a coaching program and it's $50,000, that's a lot of money and that's wonderful. And I want you to make the 50, but you do also have to be conscious that maybe that 50,000 means 6 months, 12 months, or even 24 months of you taking phone calls with your new coaching client. So you've got to be thinking well ahead, and you don't want to spend all of that money. You've got to fulfill all of the contracts. And if you do this wrong, and depending on the types of products or services that you have that you've got to fulfill, if you do it wrong, you might be a little stressed out or even resentful to your own clients because you dropped the price so much to get a few clients. And now you're like, dang, I got to be with them for a whole year. So that's another thing to think about. Now I want to go to the fourth way that you could monetize a podcast. Now, just as a reminder, if you go to episode 5, there's 7 ways there. But let's hit this fourth way. It's you could affiliate for other people's products or services, which is really, really cool. On the pro side, you don't even have to fulfill any of your contracts. So to give you a short story, an example of this, one time I ended up affiliating for somebody else. And I think I brought a few people through my podcast to an event for this guy. He's out of Texas. And I ended up helping him make lots and lots of money. And my commission was several $1,000s. And it was pretty awesome. I was like, dude, that's freaking cool. And then I thought about it. I made all of this money, and all I had to do is mention it on my podcast and host a one-day event. And the person that I affiliated for made 80% of the money. I made 20%, but they had to work for a whole year. And I felt like I had the better end of the stick. And so you've got to think of it as a pro when you're affiliating for other people that, check it out. Like if you give them something and they give you 10 or 20% of the gross, I really feel like you're making out like a bandit because it's less effort for you to have to do all of that because you don't have to fulfill any of the contracts. It's kind of awesome. Another benefit of being an affiliate is that you could actually start it today. You could start it right now, today. You could start it on episode 1. I've heard of people that have started affiliating through Amazon, through, what are those called? The Audible, and other ways where they've ended up being able to affiliate a little bit. And they talk about a book, for example, and then lots of listeners go and buy the book. They didn't have to do anything. It's pretty neat. You could get this started right now today, and it could go on episode 1. And you might find out in 5 years from now, people are still listening to episode number 1, and they're still buying that book. And so you keep checking your bank account, and you're like, dude, that's passive income because I mentioned that. It's pretty freaking cool. The next one that I wanted to mention to you is the mentions on the podcast when you're working with affiliates. They don't have to sound like an ad at all. They don't have to sound like an advertisement. They don't have to have music behind them. They don't have to be exactly 30 seconds or 60 seconds or 90 seconds or any other 15 seconds. They don't have to be structured that way. You can just happen to mention it through the podcast. For example, if I'm going through today and I think of a book idea that illustrates something perfectly of what I'm talking about, I could say, hey, by the way, I'll put a link to that book in the show notes. It'll be an affiliate link, but you can go directly to Amazon and purchase the book right now. So I'll make sure that we get that in the show notes. So I want to go to the next part. You don't have to find sponsors. If you're working for affiliate relationships, I mentioned that you can do it today, but you don't have to go out and look for sponsors to be able to start making money this way. You can literally just think to yourself, hey, who do I like? Who do I support that's in my genre? Who fits perfectly with what it is that I'm already doing? And then you can go and apply to be an affiliate. And when they say, yes, you can be an affiliate, they'll give you a special link. maybe even a promo code, and you'll be able to share that on the podcast. So it's really cool because you don't have to negotiate and try to figure out all this. You just go and I already like you. I want to affiliate for you. And many companies will let you do that very easily. The last part is if the ad performs well, you get to share in all that money with very little work. So if you're an affiliate and it performs well, you get to do that and it's easy. On the cons, there's a few cons to being an affiliate. Number one is you're building someone else's business. Obviously, like you're helping and supporting somebody else's, not necessarily yours. So that could be a con to some of you. The next thing is your listener could be actually turned off by you trying to hide that it is an affiliate relationship. So my best advice here is to just be open and honest. Just say, hey, I'm going to give some links in the show notes. Some of them are affiliate links. You don't pay any extra, but that's how I keep food on the table. That's how I monetize the podcast. You've got to be honest and open about it, because if somebody finds out that you're hiding the affiliate relationship, they're going to be pretty turned off by the affiliate, by you, by your business, and by your podcast. So you want to be very careful to be upfront, open, and honest about these affiliate relationships. And the third con to these affiliate relationships is, what if they don't use your own code or your promo link? You might have a promo code or a special unique link. What if they hear about it, but then they go and find it somewhere else? Well, to me, that is actually a con. It is actually scary, and it does actually happen. So you're going to have to come to terms with, I might miss a few of the people that listen to my podcast when I talk about this great mic that I have. They might go and find it somewhere else instead of using my affiliate link, and you're just going to have to come to terms with it. You got to be okay with it. Things that you can do to make that a little bit easier is you can ask for a discount. You can say, hey, if I'm going to affiliate for you, my listener needs to be able to save money when they work with you. And so that's something that I've done many times throughout my podcasting career, is I've been able to negotiate, hey, they get 1 month free, or they get $100 off, or they get 5% off. If you figure out something like that, it'll really benefit. And you say, by the way, if you use the link that I put, you get 10% off. If you use the link, you save $200, whatever it is. And finally, of course, if the ad performs badly in an affiliate relationship, you get nothing, not a dime, not a single cent. All of that work that you did promoting that, you get nothing. So there is a couple of cons. Here's a bonus number. My buddy, his name's Kerry Jack. Shout out if you're listening. I'm going to call his strategy 2.4 or 2.4 because it's kind of a cross between the second monetization strategy and the fourth one. So we'll just call it 2.4. It's a hybrid between having show sponsors that you go and find and having affiliate relationships. You basically find a way to have somebody who is a show sponsor to pay you up front just to be on the show. Plus, you get a little bit of the back end. So it's a kind of cool way, and you can listen to that episode. Again, this one is episode 30. That episode is coming out in a couple of days. So it'll be episode number 35 with Kerry. And he'll talk a little bit more about this bonus of how you're able to basically have a sponsor already pay you and get a part of the back end. It's pretty cool. And so you'll get more of that on episode 35. So in summation, there's a ton of ways to make money with your podcast. This was only 4 out of the 7 ways that you'll find when you go back to episode 5. And I gave you a little bonus as well. Again, in episode number 5, it went into a ton of detail of the 7 different monetization strategies. So if you want to hear that, all 7 of them, just go right back to episode number 5. And if you feel bad monetizing your show, you need to go and listen to episode number 10 about not being willing to monetize. That is a huge misconception where people, they just don't feel good monetizing. And I want to help you. So go to episode 10 for that. So you get a whole bunch of tips to help you to be able to feel more empowered to actually start making money with your show. And that's a wrap. See you on the next episode, guys. If you're glad that you checked out the podcast today, if you got some value out of this episode, some actionable takeaways, I invite you to do one of three things. A, you could do a written review on Apple. Let us know what you think. Just an honest written review. B, you could share the podcast with a friend of yours who needs it. Or C, at the very least, implement what you've learned to take your business and your podcast to the next level. And I'll see you on the next episode.